You are sitting in a meeting when someone says, "We were delayed because you never sent the final numbers." You know that is false. You remember the time, the attachment, and the reply confirming it arrived. But your body reacts before your judgment does. Your chest tightens. You interrupt. You explain the timeline, the warnings you gave, and the work you completed after everyone else had gone home. The more truth you add, the more defensive you sound. Soon the room is no longer examining the accusation, it is examining your reaction. That is the reversal most people miss. You think you are defending your position, but panic has already pulled you into someone else's frame. This lesson will show you how to pause without looking weak, correct a false claim without over-explaining, recognize what repeated conduct reveals, and choose the smallest response that protects both truth and dignity. The first principle is immediate. A reaction answers pressure. A response answers the situation. Reaction asks, "How do I make this discomfort stop?" Response asks, "What needs to become clear?" Those questions can produce entirely different lives. Return to the meeting for one moment. Instead of defending everything, you ask one calm question. Which numbers are you referring to? That question does not prove you right. It does something more important first. It forces a vague accusation to become specific. Vague claims survive on emotional speed. Specific claims must survive contact with facts. This is the first replacement behavior. Before you explain, make the claim precise. Which habit costs you more, reacting too fast or explaining too much? Keep your answer in mind. Before the end, you will know what to do instead. In Chapter Don't Fi's of The Prince, Machiavelli examines the political force of appearances and the distance between private reality and public judgment. His subject was political power, not ordinary personal conflict. But a careful modern interpretation is useful. Your intention is not automatically visible. You may know you are responsible. You may know your silence is restraint. You may know your motives are honest. Other people can only judge what they see, hear, and can verify. Being right is therefore not the same as making reality clear, and explaining more is not always the same as making reality clearer. Sometimes explanation becomes fog. You begin with one relevant fact, then add your frustration, your history, your sacrifices, and every reason the accusation feels unfair. The strongest evidence disappears beneath your need to be understood. A strategic person does not worship silence. A strategic person respects sequence. Stabilize yourself. Clarify the claim. Identify the relevant fact. Then, decide whether the situation needs a question, a correction, documentation, a boundary, an apology, distance, or no further response. Sequence protects you from using 10 actions where one would have been enough. But there is a deeper problem. You are often not explaining only to correct the record. You are trying to control how everyone feels about you. You want the accuser to admit they were unfair. You want the witnesses to recognize your good intentions. You want the room to return your reputation immediately. That desire feels reasonable. Yet it makes your peace dependent on people who may have no interest in being fair. The need to be understood can become a hidden form of surrender. It tells another person that confusion about you is enough to command your energy. A cold message controls your evening. A false assumption controls your speech. A small accusation produces a large performance. The part you rarely admit is that sometimes you explain because disapproval feels unbearable. This is the internal enemy. Not sensitivity, not emotion. The belief that your dignity becomes safe only after everyone agrees with your version. Once you see that, never explain gains a more honest meaning. It does not mean refusing useful context. It means refusing to turn your worth into an endless negotiation. Explain what truth requires. Do not explain everything fear demands. Now the principle becomes more difficult. If you stop interrupting every uncomfortable moment with defense, what should you watch instead? Conduct. People reveal themselves less through polished declarations than through repeated behavior under pressure. Someone may say they respect you. Watch what happens when you disagree. Someone may call themselves fair. Watch what happens when evidence challenges their preferred story. Someone may claim they want resolution. Watch whether a precise question makes them clearer or merely more dramatic. This is not permission to become suspicious of everyone. One mistake proves very little. A reasonable person can remember incorrectly, speak badly, become embarrassed, and still return with responsibility. A repeated pattern deserves more attention. A person committed to controlling the frame often shifts the claim when the first claim fails. They ignore the answer and attack your tone. They replace evidence with character judgments. They demand immediate responses while avoiding precise questions. Do not rush to diagnose them. Observe whether clarity improves the conversation or threatens the person who created the confusion. That is what "let them reveal themselves" should mean. Do not set traps. Do not provoke them. Do not secretly test every person around you. Stop rescuing the conversation long enough to see what the conversation repeatedly becomes. Consider a family conflict. A relative says, "You never helped this family." The sentence is total. It erases every ride, every payment, every late-night call, and every quiet responsibility you carried without announcing it. Your reactive mind begins building a case. You list what you did last month. You describe what you sacrificed. You mention who disappeared when you needed help. Soon the conversation contains years of resentment and several wounds that cannot be resolved in one evening. A strategic response is smaller. What exactly did you ask me to do that I refused? If there is a real request, you can address it. If there is a genuine hurt, you can listen. If there is only pressure disguised as a claim, specificity exposes that too. Restraint here is not coldness. It is compassion with structure. Without restraint, you may answer one unfair sentence with 5 cruel ones. You may win a detail and damage a relationship. You may prove that you helped and reveal that you have been silently keeping score. Self-command prevents temporary anger from becoming permanent language. But pausing protects only your reaction. It does not yet protect your position. For that, you need evidence. Evidence is not always a dramatic screenshot. It can be the calendar entry, the agreed deadline, the exact request, the message confirming a decision, or the boundary you stated before enforcing it. When you live vaguely, other people have more room to define events for you. When you live clearly, interpretation has less room to replace fact. At work, confirm important decisions in writing, not because every colleague is an enemy, but because memory changes under pressure. A short message after a meeting can protect everyone. To confirm, I will send the draft Tuesday and finance will provide the final numbers Thursday. That is not aggression. It is clarity before conflict. In money, know what was agreed before emotion rewrites the arrangement. In friendship, judge the pattern over time, instead of turning one disappointing week into a final verdict. In leadership, correct privately when possible, document serious repetition, and never humiliate someone simply because you have the authority to do it. Online, remember that public arguments reward speed, spectacle, and misunderstanding. Not every false statement requires your participation. Ask a better question. Will answering improve truth, protect something important, or merely feed a cycle that survives on attention? This is where the principle requires an ethical correction. Silence is not always power. Sometimes silence is fear. If a damaging false claim is becoming accepted fact, silence may surrender your position. If a boundary is repeatedly crossed, and you say nothing because confrontation frightens you, you are not letting anyone reveal themselves. You are revealing that the behavior can continue without consequence. If a sincere person asks for necessary context, refusing every explanation can become arrogance. The goal is not to become silent. The goal is to stop speaking from panic. Strategic calm has a voice. It is simply not a desperate voice. At the midpoint of a difficult conversation, ask yourself, am I making the facts clear, or am I trying to force this person to approve of me? The goals can look identical at first. They are not. Facts may require one sentence. Approval may demand an endless performance. Facts can be supported. Approval can always be withheld. Facts allow a decision. Approval keeps the negotiation open. Which is harder for you, correcting a false claim clearly, or ending the conversation when the other person refuses to deal with facts? Your answer shows whether your next lesson is courage or closure. Some conversations do not fail from lack of explanation. They fail because one person benefits from misunderstanding. You answer the first accusation, so they introduce a second. You clarify the event, so they criticize your tone. You soften your tone, so they question your motives. You explain your motives, so they reopen something unrelated from years ago. The conversation has no destination. Its purpose is continuation. Stop judging such a conversation only by what it claims to be about. Judge it by what the pattern produces. Does clarification lead toward resolution? Do facts remain stable? Can the other person acknowledge any point you make? Is there a reasonable action that would close the issue? If the answer is repeatedly no, more explanation may no longer be communication. It may be fuel. Change the form of your response. I have answered the specific question. I will not defend unrelated accusations. The record shows the file was sent Tuesday. We can discuss the process problem, but I will not accept responsibility for what happened afterward. I understand that you are upset. I am willing to discuss the request, not the claim that I never care. We are repeating ourselves. I am ending this conversation for now. Each sentence has a limit. None requires cruelty. None tries to force a confession. None depends on the other person becoming reasonable. The strength lies in allowing reality to remain clear, even when approval does not arrive. Now you need a complete response system. Use it whenever a message, accusation, insult, or demand creates immediate pressure. First, notice the body before you trust the story forming in your mind. The tightening jaw, the fast heartbeat, the urge to type, the need to interrupt. These signals do not mean you are weak. They mean your system believes something important is under threat. Do not shame the reaction. Delay obedience to it. Take one slow breath. Relax your hands. Lower your shoulders. Create enough space for judgment to return. Second, reduce the conflict to one plain claim. Remove the insult. Remove your interpretation. What was actually said? The report was late. You did not attend. You promised to pay Friday. You shared private information. A clear claim can be examined. A cloud of emotional meaning cannot. Third, ask what evidence would change the situation. A timestamp? A witness? A prior agreement? A correction in the same room where the accusation was made? A private conversation instead of a public performance? Collect enough evidence to make the next action proportionate. Do not collect it to punish. Fourth, refuse the loaded premise. If someone asks, "Why are you always so selfish?" do not begin proving that you are generous. Ask, "Which decision are you referring to?" If someone asks, "Why are you hiding the truth?" ask, "What specific information do you believe is missing?" Precision does not guarantee honesty. It prevents vagueness from controlling the conversation. Fifth, choose the smallest effective response. Sometimes it is one correction. Sometimes it is a question. Sometimes it is a boundary. Sometimes it is documentation. Sometimes it is an apology because the evidence shows you were wrong. That possibility matters. Self-command is not the art of appearing innocent. It is the strength to remain loyal to reality even when reality corrects you. If you made the mistake, admit the exact mistake without collapsing into self-condemnation. I missed the deadline. I should have warned you earlier. Here is how I will correct it. A clean admission protects more dignity than a complicated excuse. Sixth, observe what happens after clarity enters the room. Does the other person adjust? Do they acknowledge the fact? Do they become more specific? Do they continue attacking after the issue is resolved? Their response is information. Do not rush to label them. Record the pattern in your judgment. Seventh, act once and clearly. If a correction is needed, correct it. If a boundary is needed, state it. If documentation is needed, create it. If distance is needed, make it practical rather than theatrical. Do not announce your withdrawal to make someone afraid. Reduce the access that repeatedly produces harm. Distance should protect clarity, not become punishment. Eighth, close the emotional negotiation. After you have acted, stop returning to the same mental courtroom. Do not rewrite the perfect response at 2 in the morning. Do not imagine the speech that would finally make them understand. Do not ask 10 people whether you were right. Review your conduct once. Was it truthful? Was it proportionate? Was it clear? Did it protect both self-respect and humanity? Then let the matter become smaller than your life. This is the transformation the title promises. Never react does not mean suppressing emotion. Your emotion may speak to you, but it does not automatically speak for you. Never explain does not mean hiding behind silence. You explain what the situation needs, not everything your fear demands. Let them reveal themselves does not mean living in suspicion. You stop interrupting repeated conduct with excuses, fantasies, and desperate attempts to control the outcome. You watch what people do after clarity. And you watch what you do after pressure, because other people are not the only ones being revealed. So are you. Pressure reveals whether you abandon your standards to win approval. Conflict reveals whether you can tell the truth without becoming cruel. Misunderstanding reveals whether your identity depends on universal agreement. Evidence reveals whether you are willing to correct yourself. Boundaries reveal whether your calm has structure. Over time, the goal is not to become unreadable. It is to become reliable. People learn that you will not explode, perform innocence, or accept a false frame merely to end discomfort. When you speak, your words are measured. When you apologize, it is real. When you correct, it is clear. When you leave, it is not a threat. When you stay, it is not from fear. Return now to the meeting. Someone says, "We were delayed because you never sent the final numbers." The old heat rises. For 1 second, the old speech appears in your mind. Every late night, every ignored warning, every reason the room should know you were responsible. But you do not obey the speech. You place both feet on the floor. Which version are you referring to? They name the file. You open the message thread. The final version was sent Tuesday at 3:18, and it was acknowledged at 3:26. I am happy to discuss where the process failed after that. Then you stop. The room sees the evidence. It also sees your conduct. Perhaps the other person apologizes. Perhaps they change the subject. Perhaps they become irritated that the frame did not hold. You do not chase the perfect ending. Their next action belongs to them. Yours already revealed you. Not as passive, not as cold, not as someone without emotion. As someone whose emotion no longer negotiates away their judgment. The world will still contain unfair claims, confused people, wounded egos, and moments when truth arrives more slowly than accusation. Your power is not the ability to prevent all of that. Your power is the ability to meet pressure without becoming its instrument. So when the next accusation comes, do not race to prove your worth. Stabilize, clarify, support the truth, set the limit. Then watch what happens when the conversation can no longer feed on your panic. Which response will you practice first? Asking for specifics, giving one clear correction, or ending an endless explanation? Choose one, and use it the next time pressure asks you to abandon your judgment. If calm, ethical strategy helps you understand human behavior more clearly, Subscribe for more modern lessons through a Machiavellian lens. You do not need the last word to keep your position. You need the self-command to make your next word count.